They forced New Girl to bark like a dog. She broke their legs from ground level. Do it? Bark? You wanted to be a hero? Now you get to be our dog. The words echoed in Ariel Brooks's ears like a warped memory she couldn't shake. 5 boys stood in a crude circle around her in the old gymnasium, long abandoned, except for the dust and ghosts of forgotten trophies. The light filtering through the shattered windows hit her like a spotlight illuminating the humiliation they demanded. Chad Whitmore, the ringleader with a smirk carved from privilege, dangled the silver bracelet in front of her. It swung like a metronome to a rhythm of cruelty. Her father's bracelet. The only thing she had left of him. But that moment of reckoning was still minutes away. Right now, her palms hovered just above the grimy floor, her knees pressed to the concrete, and her mind was somewhere else. Back to the beginning. It started 2 months ago. New town, new school, same tired promises. Ariel and her little brother Elijah had arrived in Westdale with 2 suitcases and a hollow kind of hope. Their father, a decorated Navy vet, had passed from complications of PTSD 6 months prior, and their mother, who now worked double shifts at the local hospital, had no time left for grief. Ariel tried to carry it all, her brother's anxious questions, the weight of starting over, the shadow of a man who'd taught her how to stand, but not how to fall. Westdale High looked ordinary enough with its clean banners and polished lies, but Ariel knew how easily appearances lied. The first incident was a boy named Noah Singh, a sophomore, barely 5'5", who dared to walk the wrong side of the cafeteria. Chad and his friends cornered him near the vending machines. When Ariel walked by, she thought she heard laughter. It wasn't until she turned and saw Noah wiping chocolate milk off his face that she realized it wasn't a prank. It was a warning. She intervened. She always did. Told them to back off, helped Noah up, took him to the nurse. That was her mistake. It didn't take long for the retaliation. Her locker was graffitied with slurs. Someone switched her gym uniform with one soaked in urine. Fake rumors about her attacking Chad spread through the halls faster than truth ever could. When Ariel tried to report it, the vice principal smiled the kind of smile that meant nothing would be done. "Boys will be boys," he said. Her voice cracked when she told her mom, but there were bills to pay. "Stay strong, baby," her mother whispered, exhausted. "We don't have room for trouble." Trouble found her anyway. Chad's crew didn't just harass her. They found Elijah one day reading alone under the bleachers. He was wearing one of his Doctor Who t-shirts, the kind their dad had bought him. They soaked it in soda, pushed him, called him nerd trash. Ariel confronted them that same afternoon, her fists clenched, but her voice steady. She didn't fight. Not yet. She remembered her dad's voice. "You only fight when you must, and when you do, you finish it fast." Then the bracelet went missing. She always kept it in a small pouch inside her backpack. Silver with her father's initials engraved. The last thing he gave her before his final spiral. When she noticed it gone, she felt like the air had been punched from her lungs. She searched everywhere. When she asked Chad, half daring, half praying, he held up his wrist, flashing it like a trophy. "Oh, this old thing found it. Finders keepers?" She went home and screamed into a pillow. Elijah sat outside her door, silent. Later, he slipped her a note. "Don't let them break you." But they tried. God, they tried. Photoshopped images of her spread across fake social accounts. Anonymous notes in her locker saying she should have died with her dad. But the worst was yet to come. One afternoon, she couldn't find Elijah. He wasn't answering texts. Hours passed. Her stomach twisted. When she found him locked inside the janitor's closet, crying, soaked in his own urine, the light in her cracked. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on her father's old duffel bag, the one that still smelled like deployment sand and detergent. She pulled out the gear he left behind: gloves, tapes a letter with fading ink. "You are not your pain. You are the protector. When it's time, you will know." The message came the next morning. Old Jim. 3 p.m. Come alone. or your brother's breakdown goes viral. Now here she was, on her knees, heart steady, hands twitching, and the bracelet swinging in front of her face like a dare. ChatGPT Jun Noi. You think I'm scared? Ariel's voice cracked through the thick air, louder than any plea someone in her position should ever dare to make. Chad's laughter ricocheted off the dusty walls, but Ariel felt no shame in raising her chin. She was standing at the edge of her own breaking point, and something in her snapped back into place. It wasn't courage she discovered in that moment. It was fury. A furnace of raw, relentless determination that her father had once whispered about long before the PTSD claimed his nights. When words fail, strength speaks, he'd said, pressing that silver bracelet into her small palm. But remember, justice requires more than power. She recalled him training her in silent drills, push-ups, breath control stance work, his calm voice cutting the night air. Everything she'd been taught screamed for retaliation, but she remembered his warning, wield it wisely. Now, as she flexed her fingers, the scent of sweat and dust mingled with adrenaline, she would be strategic. Chad stepped forward, his grin more feral than ever. Show us, hero. Show us why we shouldn't crush you like the bug you are. He patted his chest as if he owned the whole world. Ariel scanned the circle faces contorted with cruelty phones, recording every second witnesses in full voyeur mode. Even Jamal Thomas, the student journalist perched on the bleachers, tears in his eyes, live streaming for likes and justice. She needed to make this count. Her plan formed in a single heartbeat, bait them into false security, then strike. Chad wiggled the bracelet in front of her face. Crawl, bark, beg. He paused to savor the power. Ariel let her gaze drop to the cracked floor. The concrete reminded her of her father's old dojo, her childhood sanctuary transformed now into an arena of her deepest shame. She allowed herself to look broken. Then she moved. Connor, the muscle of the group just a step too close, felt her sudden pivot. With a practiced twist, her hip guiding her weight, she snapped his ankle. The sickening crack echoed like gunfire. He collapsed, eyes wide, the triumphant smirk wiped clean. Husk of breath wheezed from him. Ariel's heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. Shock rippled around the circle. Jake, the official filmer, stumbled back, phone nearly dropping. Ariel didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, voice calm but fierce. Justice isn't about making noise. It's about making them feel the weight of their choices. Her words landed like stones. Chad's bravado wavered. He held the bracelet aloft like a trophy, but now it felt hollow. She closed the distance, knelt beside Connor, adjusting her stance to strike again, and then paused. The world seemed to slow. Chad's wide eyes, Jamal's tearing face, Co Larson's phone cam capturing every beat. The gym's broken windows let in a beam of sunlight that glinted off the silver bracelet lying on the floor. She stood, letting gravity do the rest. Chad's knees buckled as he realized everyone was watching, not cheering, but horrified. She locked eyes with him. Enough, she whispered. This ends now. Silence crashed in their faces as the final seconds ticked away. Ariel's chest heaved. She was raw, trembling, but unbroken. Behind her, Co Larson stepped forward, voice steady. Ariel Brooks. You did what no one else dared. I saw everything. Jamal lowered his phone, eyes shining. The bracelet caught the light one last time, and then the gym doors burst open. Detain her, now. The voice boomed through the gym like a shotgun blast. The doors slammed open, and Principal Holloway stormed in, flanked by 2 security officers. His face, usually blank with practiced bureaucracy, was twisted with something between rage and fear. What on earth is going on here? He barked, eyes landing on the fallen boys. Then the blood, then Ariel, standing tall, silver bracelet glinting like defiance incarnate. She didn't flinch. This girl, Chad wheezed, still crumpled. She attacked us, out of nowhere. She's crazy, his voice cracked, hands trembling as he reached for support. But the cameras were still rolling, live stream still humming, and the truth, unfiltered raw, was already spreading beyond the school walls. Principal Holloway scanned the room, disoriented by the sea of phones and gasps. He tried to assert control. Turn those cameras off. Now. No one moved. Not even Jamal. Especially not Jamal. His hand gripped the phone tighter, lens pointed straight at the truth. Sir, he said, voice calm, this isn't just a school incident anymore. The world is watching. Ariel's breath hitched. The air was electric, her heart pounding in rhythm with the consequences, now barreling toward her. Her father had warned her of this too, not just about physical battles, but about the war of perception. They'll try to rewrite your story, he'd said, so you write it first. I was called here under threat, Ariel said, her voice cutting through the chaos. They stole my father's bracelet. They locked my brother in a closet. They demanded I bark like a dog. She turned slowly, letting her words hang like blades. And you let them. Co Larson stepped forward, her hand raised not in fear, but in solidarity. I've been quiet too long, she said. This school has a pattern. We protect the privileged and punish the brave. No more. She looked at Holloway squarely. I'm filing a formal statement. This ends with accountability. But the power struggle wasn't over. Chad's mother, Councilwoman Whitmore, arrived within 15 minutes. He'd called her the second Ariel snapped Connor's ankle. She swept into the gym in designer heels, voice like venom. This girl assaulted my son. Expel her. Press charges. She was defending herself, Co Larson interjected. I have it all recorded. Whitmore sneered. You're a literature teacher. Stay in your lane. The air thickened. Ariel stepped forward again, not trembling but anchored. Your son humiliated, stalked, and terrorized me and my brother. The only reason you're here is because his victims fought back. She held up the bracelet. This is all I had left of my father. He died a hero while your son plays tyrant behind privilege. The room held its breath, but then from the back of the gym, a new voice emerged. It was Elijah. He'd arrived quietly unnoticed, but his presence now shattered whatever narrative Chad's mother had been trying to spin. She didn't want to fight, Elijah said, eyes red but resolute. She begged them to stop. They wouldn't. So she did what my dad taught us to protect. He walked up to his sister, took her hand, and raised it gently. For a split second, the gym was a courtroom, and the jury was the entire internet. That night, the video hit over 1.2 million views. You think your little story can undo my son's future? Councilwoman Whitmore's voice trembled with righteous fury as she pointed a manicured finger toward Ariel. He's a scholarship athlete. You're nothing but a violent charity case. The words stung, but not in the way the councilwoman intended. Ariel had heard versions of this her whole life. Veiled or blatant, the message was the same. Kids like her weren't supposed to fight back. They were expected to be grateful, silent and visible. But the bracelet around her wrist burned, with memory, with meaning. Her father's words echoed in her bones. You don't raise your voice just to be heard. You raise it to stop the silence from swallowing others. Principal Holloway, desperate to regain authority, cleared his throat. Everyone, please. This has become highly politicized. Let's allow the school board to... No, Ariel interrupted. Her voice was steady, but it rang with something that made people stop scrolling, stop breathing. No more delays, no more hiding behind boards or policies or donors. You want the truth? You're standing in it. She stepped into the center of the gym, her silhouette framed by sunlight streaming through broken panes. What happened here is bigger than me. It's not just bullying. It's about power. About who gets believed, who gets protected, and who gets punished for surviving. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Some students had trickled in, lured by texts and live streams. A few teachers lingered at the edges. Even Coach Ramirez, who'd always looked the other way during locker room hazing, now stared at the floor, shame burning into his shoes. Jamal's voice cut the tension. I just got confirmation. Local stations picking it up. The live stream hit 3 million. He looked up at Ariel. They want to interview you. Like now. Councilwoman Whitmore bristled. You think this circus proves anything? Do you know who I am? Ariel met her gaze. Do you know who I am? She turned to the crowd. I'm the girl you pushed too far, the sister who won't let her brother grow up scared, the daughter of a soldier who taught me that silence is surrender. Her breath caught. So no, I won't be silent. Not for you, not for anyone. The room for one suspended moment held a sacred kind of quiet. Then a voice rose from the bleachers. It was Noah Singh, the sophomore she'd defended weeks ago. I saw it. I was there when they shoved you, when they took your stuff. I didn't say anything. I was afraid. He stood trembling but resolute. But I'm done being afraid. Another voice joined in. Grace Park. They came after me too. Posted my grades online. Said I only got into AP Chem because I'm Asian. Then Jamal. They defaced my camera gear. Called me a diversity token. One by one, stories poured out kids who had stayed silent for months, even years. What began as Ariel's stand had become a reckoning. A slow rising chorus of truth. Principal Holloway's face paled. His carefully curated hierarchy was crumbling in real time. But the fight wasn't over. Councilwoman Whitmore grabbed her phone and began dialing. We'll sue. We'll bury this school in litigation. Ariel took a slow breath, then pulled something from her pocket, the letter her father had written before he passed. She held it high. This is from a man who gave his life believing this country could be better. He told me that justice doesn't come gift-wrapped. You have to drag it out of the dark. And I'm not dragging alone anymore. At that moment, a new voice entered the fray. Deep, steady. I suggest you put the phone down, ma'am. Everyone turned. At the entrance stood Superintendent Ronaldo Ortiz, flanked by 2 education investigators and a representative from the Department of Justice. His badge glinted in the light. And just like that, everything shifted. You have 5 minutes to tell me the truth before I shut this school down. Superintendent Ronaldo Ortiz's voice sliced through the tension like a scalpel. Councilwoman Whitmore's bravado faltered as all eyes turned to him. His presence, calm, calculating, unflinching, didn't just represent authority, it demanded accountability. Ariel stood frozen for a moment, the silver bracelet around her wrist suddenly heavy. Not with fear, but with the weight of vindication. She wasn't alone anymore. Principal Holloway stammered, tugging at his collar. Superintendent Ortiz, if we could just... No, Ortiz interrupted. I've seen enough. The live stream. The incident reports buried in your email. The anonymous complaints. This school has enabled a culture of silence, and that ends today. He turned to Ariel. Ms. Brooks, are you willing to make a statement on record? Ariel took a step forward, voice steady. Yes, I want to file a formal grievance. Against Chad Whitmore, his accomplices, and every adult who ignored the signs, including this administration. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice didn't waver. This isn't about revenge. It's about change. Ortiz nodded. Then we begin. What followed was a cascade. Students poured out of classrooms drawn by the live stream by whispers, by the sudden realization that things were shifting. One by one, they stepped forward. Testimonies, stories, evidence, texts, photos, a yearbook filled with coded slurs, screenshots of a group chat titled Purity Squad, where Brandon, Chad, and their crew discussed targets like a game. Jamal streamed every second. At some point, the school nurse emerged with a medical report of Elijah's trauma. Even Coach Ramirez, once silent, brought forth surveillance footage from practice sessions showing Chad bullying younger teammates. It was like a dam had broken. Not just truth spilling out, but rage. Years of it. Hidden under layers of discipline codes and reputation management. Ariel watched silent, but alert. She wasn't the only one fighting anymore, but she wasn't done either. Councilwoman Whitmore attempted one final maneuver. This is a witch hunt, she hissed. I will sue every one of you. I'll have your jobs. Ortiz raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, you might want to contact your attorney, because your son has just been suspended pending a criminal investigation, and your influence doesn't reach federal civil rights law. For the first time, Whitmore had no words. Outside news vans were already lining up. Drone cameras hovered above the campus. Reporters jostled for interviews. But Ariel didn't crave the spotlight. Instead, she sat on the bleachers beside Elijah, wrapping an arm around him. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Elijah nodded, then looked at her with wide, wondering eyes. "You did it, Ari? You stopped them?" She shook her head. "No. We did. Every person who spoke up. Every truth that got heard." She looked down at the bracelet again, the engraving catching the sun. "Dad always said justice isn't what you get, it's what you build." That night, the school board held an emergency session. Principal Holloway was placed on administrative leave. Coach Ramirez submitted his resignation with a public apology. An independent review of the school's disciplinary practices was launched. More importantly, students formed a coalition called We Rise, a permanent peer advocacy group, and Ariel. She turned down every interview. She didn't need a microphone to be heard anymore. But, just as she thought it was over, her mother walked into her room holding a letter with a government seal. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "this came for you. From the Department of Defense. Your father's name is being considered for a posthumous Medal of Valor." The words stunned Ariel into silence. She stared at the envelope, the official crest pressed into the paper like a seal from another universe. Her mother's eyes shimmered, both proud and afraid. "They want you to attend the ceremony," she said softly, placing a trembling hand on Ariel's shoulder. "They saw what you did, and they said you reminded them of him." Ariel wasn't sure what to feel. That her father, whose memory had loomed like a monument over her every decision, was finally being honored, or that the world only seemed to care now that her pain had gone viral. Still, the letter pulsed in her hand, heavy with meaning. Not just recognition, not just closure, but inheritance. The following week unfolded in fragments. Councilwoman Whitmore issued a public statement, carefully worded, legally filtered, emotionally vacant. Chad was sent to a juvenile rehabilitation program. No charges pressed, privilege still had its shields, but his scholarships were revoked, and his social standing vaporized. He would never be untouchable again. More meaningful to Ariel, though, was what changed at Westdale High. Co Larson became interim principal. The school installed new anonymous reporting systems. Restorative justice programs were piloted. Diversity training that wasn't just checkbox compliance began, and once a week a quiet room was opened for students like Elijah, for healing, for listening. But Ariel didn't feel like a hero. Every hallway she walked still carried echoes of what happened. Students whispered. Some offered smiles. Others still looked away. She wasn't after applause, but the silence even now still pierced. It wasn't fear. It was the weight of being known for something you didn't choose. She began training again alone in the old gym early mornings before classes, her father's duffel bag still by her side. One day she found Elijah watching quietly from the doorway. "Teach me," he asked. She nodded. And so the routines became rituals, not for violence, but for control, discipline, peace. The night before the ceremony, Ariel couldn't sleep. She stood by her window, bracelet in hand, moonlight pouring across her floor like truth. What did justice mean now? She hadn't destroyed the system, but maybe she'd cracked it open. At the ceremony, she wore her father's jacket over her dress. Oversized, heavy, but grounding. When her name was called to receive the medal in his honor, she stepped onto the stage with a silence that made more noise than applause ever could. The speaker, a retired commander, handed her the framed medal, then leaned down to whisper, "He would have been proud of what you did. Not because you fought, but because you chose when to." Ariel blinked back tears. After the ceremony, press circled like sharks, but she cut through them, heading outside where the air felt real. Elijah ran up beside her, beaming. "You look like a general," she laughed. "Nah, just a girl with a story no one wanted to hear, until they couldn't ignore it." He hesitated. "Are you going to tell it? All of it?" She looked out at the horizon. The sky was soft with twilight, the kind of color that didn't exist during chaos. "Not yet," she said. "But I'll write it. And maybe one day someone will read it before it gets this far." But even as she smiled, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text popped up. You think you won, but we're not done. Tell the truth, or we'll post the rest. The message was short. Attached was a photo grainy dark, but unmistakable. Ariel curled up outside her father's bedroom door, clutching the bracelet face soaked with tears. It had been taken years ago. A night her father had collapsed mid-flashback. No one but her and Elijah had been there. No one else should have had that image. Ariel's stomach clenched. This wasn't just bullying. This was a calculated strike. And whoever sent it had access to her past. Elijah found her sitting in their backyard, the phone still glowing in her hand. What's wrong? He asked. She hesitated. Someone knows things they shouldn't. About Dad? About me. His face tightened. Do you think it's Chad? She shook her head. He's a puppet. This feels different. Sharper. The days that followed blurred. The school, despite reforms, still buzzed with whispers. A few anonymous accounts began posting vague threats. Some adults urged her to let it go. The battle had been won, they said. Why stir old coals? But Ariel knew better. She recognized the tone, the pattern. This was about silencing survivors, not with fists, but with shame. She dug through her father's old journals that night, pages creased with grief and grit. One entry stood out. Secrets are weapons, but so is truth. The difference is in who you're willing to protect. That was it. The next morning, she stood in front of the student body, having requested 5 minutes during assembly. Co Larson nodded from the side of the stage. Cameras flashed, phones lifted. But Ariel didn't flinch. Some of you think justice ends with punishment, that once someone's embarrassed, the fight is over. But it isn't. Real change takes more than broken bones and apologies. It takes courage to keep showing up, especially when they try to shut you down in quieter ways. She took a deep breath. Last night, I got a threat. A photo from years ago, something deeply personal. It was meant to humiliate me. And it almost worked. But then I remembered silence protects abusers. Speaking protects everyone else. Gasps echoed through the room. Whispers turned into murmurs of awe. Ariel continued. I don't know who sent it, but I know why. Because when systems can't crush you with policy, they'll try to crush you with fear. She paused. So here's my answer. You can't shame what I've already made peace with. That photo. It was taken during the worst night of my life, but it also reminds me who I've become since. So post it. I dare you. The auditorium fell into stunned silence. Then applause. Not the thunderous viral kind, but the quiet rising kind. The kind that builds into something unshakable. That night, the account that had posted the threats vanished. But another account popped up, this one. Anonymous, but kind. It posted a black and white photo of Ariel at the podium. Captioned simply, "This is what strength looks like." Today, we don't celebrate victory. We celebrate survival. Ariel's voice rang clear through the auditorium, not rehearsed, not performative, just real. The senior graduation ceremony pulsed with the weight of everything that had happened. Students sat in their folding chairs in caps and gowns, but the air was charged with more than just nostalgia. It was remembrance. It was reckoning. It was renewal. They had asked her to speak reluctantly at first. The school board had debated it. Some parents protested, but the students made it non-negotiable. If she doesn't speak, Jamal had said we walk. So she stood there in a simple white dress, her father's bracelet glinting beneath her sleeve, and Elijah's small hand squeezing hers from the front row. I know this year didn't go as planned. She began scanning the crowd. We saw people fall. We saw others rise. But the truth is, real growth doesn't happen when you win. It happens when you choose to keep going. There were no viral clips this time, no trending hashtags, just people listening. Really listening. She glanced at the front row where Chad sat quietly, not as a guest, but as a reminder. Part of his agreement with the rehabilitation program was to attend and listen. His presence didn't spark anger anymore. It sparked clarity. He looked older now, smaller, like someone who had finally seen himself in a broken mirror. Some of us were pushed. Ariel continued not just by bullies, but by systems, by silence, by the weight of being invisible. But we didn't disappear. We organized. We told our stories. We made it impossible to look away. She paused and held up a folded letter. This is the speech I was supposed to give. The safe one. The one that talks about bright futures and gratitude. But I'm not interested in safety. I'm interested in truth. She tore the paper in half. I've learned that healing isn't linear. That justice isn't clean. That sometimes standing up means standing alone for a while. But eventually someone stands with you. Then another. And another. She turned toward the crowd. And that's how we change the world. The room erupted not with wild cheers, but with a standing ovation that felt like a heartbeat. Unified. Steady. Real. After the ceremony, Ariel walked past the empty gym, sunlight spilling across the floor where it had all begun. She stepped inside just for a moment, touched the cracked concrete, and whispered, "Thank you." She found Elijah waiting outside with a notebook. "What's this?" she asked. "I wrote it for you," he said shyly. "A story about a girl with a silver bracelet who broke a cycle." She smiled, holding back tears. "You're going to be a better writer than me." "No," he said, "I'm going to be me. And that's enough." As they walked home, the world felt both the same and completely new. The battles weren't over. There would be more systems to challenge, more silence to break. But for now, they had a beginning. Ariel glanced up at the sky, her fingers brushing the bracelet one last time. "Dad," she whispered, "we're okay now. I kept the promise."